The first one would be like, it's not just about the actors. We started looking into the actors, and now we realize that these actors work in a context vis-a-vis, they interact with the government, with the donors, with the private sector. So we need to understand those relations and the relationships that they build and the interactions amongst them. And we have to look into the context. What is that environment? Is it enabling or not enabling where the actors are evolving? The second innovation is that you can tailor the mapping. I mean, you can decide what questions you want to ask. So it's, as I was saying before, it's not that they're like ready-made recipes when you do a mapping. It depends on what you want to use that information for, whether it's in the programming like exercise, whether it's when you are setting up a budget support program and you want to know who you want to engage with within civil society, whether you're thinking about setting up a program in support of civil society organizations and so forth. The third would be, it's not just about what you see, what is visible. There is much more to that. And this is something we're seeing in the last couple of years with all those, that wave of protest and citizens taking the streets and looking for different ways of expressing themselves rather than the traditional channels. So it's about new fluid forms of civic action. Many of them are supported by social media, and those are like ad hoc alliances, you know, like people coming together for one cause or for another. And those actors are becoming more and more relevant. The fourth would be the process matters, and we are realizing that the process of mapping is not just a study that you have, it's the whole process that really matters, and matters as much as the outcome, you know, as what you get out of it. So you have to handle it with care, and you have to engage not just the focal point within the delegation, but the other sectors in the delegation, rather than working in silos. And then the fifth innovation for me, and this is something that has been a collective learning exercise, is that there are new tools and there are new frameworks that are there, much more participatory, that allow us to understand the roles of civil society organizations, the entry points that they have in the public policy cycle, how they work with each other, and it's exciting because it's there and we can build on that. I would say the first one, it's we have that tendency to think about civil society as it belongs just to the person who deals with civil society in the delegation. So there's that effort and that urge to mainstream civil society, and that it becomes interesting also for the head of governance, for the head of cooperation, for the political section, that they understand that they need to understand better the actors, because it's also for their own sake and for the sake of EU cooperation in a given context. Number two, when, in terms of challenges, is the insufficient cooperation with other donors. I mean, everyone is trying to know more and to understand better civil society and even like a given society. So they do undertake like their own studies. And we bombard organizations, you know, with consultants coming in and asking the same questions all over and over again. So it would be much better if the member states, but also other relevant donors in the given country, could work together. Another challenge is to get the actors themselves interested. And it's to build more ownership over the process of mapping, so that we ask questions that are relevant to them, not just relevant to the EU. That this is an exercise that for them is useful, and they decide to be on board and to get involved, and not just on a extracting manner that we're getting information out of there. Then I think we have to be aware of the context, and the context, as this is one of the things that I was talking about before, is it matters, and you have to be very realistic about what you can do in a given context, and whether you will have political interference or you have a risk of harnessing the organizations by making them more visible. And then it's the issue of like, civil society is dynamic, it changes. So what you study today, you might have to restudy, you will have to restudy and reassess that in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. So it has to be a process that repeats itself on a regular basis.